program is brought to you by Agnes Scott College. For more information about Agnes Scott College, please visit our website at agnesscott.edu.
We'd like very much to welcome you and tell you how happy we are that you have come out for this program this evening. Those of you who may have heard me at some point before know that I am likely to do one or two very short advertisements before we get into the program. Tonight is no exception. In behalf of the Center for the Book, we sponsor about 140 different author programs each year, and many of them are held here in Decatur, many in the library at the Decatur Library, and a number of them here at Agnes Scott. This fall, we have a particularly entertaining lineup, I think, featuring people including the British historical novelist Philippa Gregory, Garrison Keillor, and both of those people will be here in this auditorium. Carmen Deedy, CBS 60 Minutes correspondent Byron Pitts, Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Robert Olen Butler, Paget Powell. And this year we are co-sponsoring the Atlanta Queer Literary Festival in November. We'll host Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Gordon Wood, Jill McCorkle, and in December we'll have one of the finest mystery writers in America, Sue Grafton, here. Those programs will all be free. We hope you'll come to as many as possible. Now, about tonight's program, when Judy Shepard finishes speaking, she is open to taking questions from the audience, and there are two microphones on either side of the auditorium. If you have a question, we would ask you to please go to that microphone and speak up there. It will enable not only the audience, but Judy Shepard to hear the question. And at the end of her talk, she will be signing books at the Austin Campus Center in the hub. If you don't know where that is, follow the crowd. The student ushers will be delighted to direct you. It's just a short walk away, and Outright Books will be there selling books, and Judy will be signing copies of her book. Now, I think it would probably be impossible for most of us to imagine the pain and the suffering that Judy Shepard has undergone over the last 11 years. Imagine as a parent losing your eldest son, in this case Matthew, barely 21 years old. Further, try to imagine comprehending the nature of his death, his brutal murder, and then the endless, difficult legal struggle to see that his murderers were eventually brought to justice. She has been through a terrible personal ordeal, and she has survived. And not only has she endured, but she has made an amazing, triumphal monument of this accumulation of pain. In her new book, The Meaning of Matthew, My Son's Murder in Laramie and a World Transformed, she offers us eloquent, courageous evidence of how she has accomplished that feat. How, in fact, Matthew's murder ultimately gave her the strength to reach for understanding and tolerance, and to become a visionary figure in the continuing struggle for equality and justice for gays and lesbians and others whose lifestyles have evoked shameful anger and violence. This book represents the first time she has spoken directly about her son's life and the aftermath of his death. It also explains why she decided to honor his life and his death by committing herself at considerable personal cost to assuming the role of an international activist for gay rights. She is not simply a voice, she has become a beloved face to the gay and lesbian communities across this nation, pursuing with vigilance and determination her belief that intolerance is intolerable, that injustice is not justice, and that civil rights is a civil right. She co-founded the Matthew Shepard Foundation, which is dedicated to education and diversity awareness, and she travels the country speaking in its behalf. She would be, of course, welcome here at any time, but with the special privilege of having her new book out, We're honored to welcome her to Atlanta, to the Georgia Center for the Book, and to Agnes Scott College. Please welcome Judy Shepard.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate you coming tonight. I appreciate it very much. On the drive over here, going through all that traffic, I appreciate it even more. It reminds me why I still live in Wyoming. I'm going to be squinting a little bit because I can't see you very well, so please forgive me for that. I'm not going to talk very long. I'd rather open the floor to questions. I understand there are microphones at each side. So when questions begin, which is going to be just pretty soon, if you wouldn't mind lining up, that would be great. I know that's a difficult thing to start, but once it starts, it moves pretty quickly. And I really encourage you to ask those questions, because if it's on your mind, it's likely on someone else's mind as well. I've been speaking at colleges and some corporations for the last 10 years. January of 2000 was my first. I was asked by the police departments in Laramie and Albany County to not have too high a profile in the year before the trials of the two men who murdered Matt. So that's really when I started to do it. When I started this book tour a week ago, I began to be really happy that I've had the experience to travel like a crazy person. Airplane after airplane after airplane, and interview after interview after interview, and then this as well. I kind of know how to move around between hotels and airports. I really never unpack, so this is not really a new trip for me, but I find it to be really rewarding. I meet some of the most amazing people on all my travels, and I appreciate that you came here tonight. The reason that I wanted to do this book now is it'll be 11 years next month since Matthew passed, and we've certainly talked about him and the causes of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community, the GLBT community, the civil rights that they lack. And to me, that's really all this is about, is the very simple act of giving all of their civil rights to them. It seems sort of hypocritical to me as a nation that we criticize other nations for being not really progressive in human rights when we ourselves are not. So this is really my goal, is to make sure that legally and legislatively the GLBT community has everything that everyone else has. Beyond that, we need to move toward acceptance. I sort of like to move away from the word tolerate or tolerance, because it's, you tolerate bad hair days, not people. So we need to move into the arena of acceptance now. They are human beings, everyone only different in that who they love, and at the end of the day, really, does that matter to anybody but them? In my opinion, it does not. This is about guaranteeing their safety, their security, and their happiness as well. Matthew didn't live to find a soulmate in his life, but if he had, I certainly would have been hard-pressed to not be quite angry at someone who would deny him the right to be with that partner for life in marriage. So that's been my goal now, is I want Matt and his friends and his community to be safe and to feel like they belong in a world where sometimes it's very hard to be the least bit different. In Wyoming, we are very underpopulated. We are 8th largest in size of the 50 states, but lowest in population. In 2006, we crossed the 500,000 mark for the state for the first time ever. We actually have more sheep than people, more antelope than people. It's an interesting place to be, but we are also 96% white in Wyoming. So it's hard to talk about diversity and how important it is to a community to welcome diversity and to discuss it, to learn about it, when you don't live among it. I think that ignorance is the worst enemy of the gay community. There aren't enough of us who can educate the public at large. And what we don't know about the gay community really hurts the community, which is why I encourage members and their friends, family, allies to talk about their lives a lot, to acquaint the public with who they are, so that y'all know that the gay community is your pastor, your fireman, your police chief, your banker, your neighbor, your baker, your grocer, your representatives in Congress. We are everywhere. And when you know that, the stereotypes begin to disappear. The stereotypes are the enemy of the gay community. So I just encourage everyone to speak out about their life, really, whether it's sexual orientation related or gender identity or religion or race. We are a nation of bigotry still. Maybe it's getting less, maybe not. I still think that not so much. We have a high element of fear, particularly in an economic downturn where we want to blame someone else for our own lack of success, our own problems. We have to blame someone. Former Governor Ann Richards of Texas put it really well when she said we no longer have a common enemy based out of the U.S. So we need to, people begin to concentrate on what's going on inside. And it explains throughout the ages why we've selected a group of people to blame our problems on. Sometimes we do that here too. Even though we're a nation based on immigration and new things, we tend to feel still kind of xenophobic about new things and new people and new cultures. It behooves us to learn about them because it enriches our life, to not sort of diminishes us in the long run. So that's kind of what I'm about. I did the book now because it's been a while. I felt I could actually do it now, call up those memories and still make it back. It's been hard to open that door after all this time. We did it together, Dennis and Logan and I. We had to put these memories in order. This is our truth. This is what we remember, how we remember it, what our lives were like then, sort of our own perspective, which really no one else can do. And I wanted everyone to know that even though you know him as Matthew, he was Matt to his family and friends, always Matt. When he went to boarding school, it was Mateo or Matty, but never Matthew. And I wanted you to know him as a three-dimensional person, not just the name on a page or the icon of the community, the victim, if you will, of hate, but a three-dimensional person with the real personality and issues, just like the rest of us. He was not perfect, and he would not want you to think that he was. It's a disservice to him to do anything but tell you who he was, good and bad, warts and all, issues and all. He was a 21-year-old college student who smoked too much, he drank too much, and he didn't study enough, much like many other college students that I know. So there was nothing unique about him in that respect. I just want you to know that. He wasn't the perfect angelic child that some people want him to be. So it was important to him to be honest about himself, and it's important to his family that we be honest as well. So that being said, I'd like to open the floor to questions. We have quite a lot of time, so questions come to mind, please come forward. Always the first one is the most difficult. So if you come with a question, I invite you to please step forward. And if I've created questions, please step forward. When I speak to college audiences, I threaten them with the test if they don't ask questions. I don't think that's going to work here, but, you know, in fact, I didn't even bring it with me. Darn it. Anyway, so let's start. I don't see the microphone, so okay, there you are. Okay, great. Yes, I can. I don't know if it's on, but I can hear you.
Thank you very much for coming here today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I first saw you at the University of Notre Dame. It seems like it's been 10 years ago. I think it was very early in your public journey where you came to try to encourage the administration there to accept their gay, lesbian students, which, by the way, 10 years later, they still have not done.
Yeah.
But you were incredibly compelling at that point in time. It seems like it was very soon after the tragedy. I'm interested in what has changed in your perspective in 10 years or thereabouts. What have you learned? What has your journey been like? What's different from what you want us to know now to what you said then 10 years ago?
You know, I remember Notre Dame very well. I was so honored to be invited and kind of overwhelmed that the flagship of the Catholic University system was inviting me to come and speak to them about my issues and my son. And I was a little startled that most of my audience were priests and nuns. I thought that was quite amazing. And they were asking me religion-related questions, and I'm thinking, y'all should be asking yourselves those questions, not me. It was really quite a thrill for me to be there, and it was also my first University of Rabid fans, Notre Dame alumni fans. When you have a standalone store that's just full of stuff, that's pretty amazing to me. What have I learned now that I didn't know then? That's a really good question, and I'm not really sure how to answer it. Because everything I have done since then has been sort of the yin and the yang. The really good thing is that I have discovered there are far more good people, far more people interested in furthering the cause of the gay community than opposite. But also what I've learned is the people who are opposite are the most loud, the most vocal. They tend to be in the press more often than those who support, who want change. I have learned that the religious community is very supportive in many ways of the gay and lesbian transgender community, but the bad is not all churches are. Many churches have signs that say all are welcome here to worship, but they don't really mean it. That part has been very challenging to me. Of all the hurt directed at the gay community, I think church hurt must be some of the worst. To go to the one place where you think you're going to find open arms, a welcoming atmosphere, and have the doors shut in your face, I think just must be a horrendous feeling. Many churches have gay and lesbian support groups. Sometimes the support groups are meant to really support them, and sometimes they're meant to try to tell the gay community that they can pray their way out of gay. Well, that doesn't work. You are who you are. You have choices to make, yes, about who you are, but you're either gay or you're not. That's kind of how that works. I couldn't anymore be gay myself than I could fly. And it's just who you are. When Matt came out to me, he said, "Mom, if there was a pill that I could take where I could be like everybody else, I would absolutely definitely do that. Because the last thing I want to be is different." But as he progressed into his life, like even a month later, it was like, when I said that, I don't know what I was thinking. I am who I am. I love myself. I respect myself. And I want to be me, whatever that would entail. And I thought that was a very mature attitude for a person of 18. Many of us go through life never really knowing who we are. But to realize that about yourself at that young age is really quite remarkable. The coming out process is kind of like that. And what I've learned there is that it's a very individual experience. There's no template to explain that away. But also what I've learned is that there's been great progress in that arena. When I first started doing this, one of the saddest things I found were families who were rejecting their children because they were gay. Your children are no different now than they were 5 seconds ago before they told you that they were gay. And seriously, I maintain you knew it anyway. I think we all know if we know a loved one who is gay. The hard part is bringing it up here. But we all know. I was pretty sure when Matt was 8 that he was gay. Don't ask me how I know that, other than perhaps his favorite Halloween costume was Dolly Parton. And I actually got yelled at one day for saying that. He said, "You're furthering stereotypes." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but that's what I thought." That's what I thought. I just waited for Matt to come out to me. I knew that Matt was an individual. If I approached him first, he would retreat. But I've had many young people say to me that they've left copies of the Advocate magazine, which is like the gay version of Time magazine, around the house, and they say, "Mom just keeps picking it up and putting it back in my room without asking any questions." Sometimes they want you to start the conversation. Sometimes you have to wait for them to start the conversation. You have to know your family, and nobody knows them better than you. So, but what I've learned now is that not so many families are rejecting their children, and I have a wonderful story to share, one of my favorite. I did some things with a wonderful student from Ohio State, and he hadn't come out to his parents yet. He was a sophomore, I believe, and he decided one weekend he was going to go home and tell his folks that he was gay. So I drove home. He pulled up in the driveway, left his car running, went in the house. His mom is sitting on the sofa knitting or crocheting or something. His father is downstairs doing something, watching football, I don't know. The young man comes in and he says, "Mom, I have to tell you something. I am gay." And she looked up and she yelled down the stairs, "Bob, I win the bet. He told me later he was a little disappointed there wasn't a little more drama. And he certainly hadn't expected that they had already figured it out, but the truth is, we know. We all know. And I can't tell you how many older gentlemen, 60, even in their 50s, 60s, come up to me after a program and say, I've been so moved by your program, I'm going to call my mom right now and tell her that I'm gay. Okay. Good. Good. But you think really she doesn't know by now that maybe? But the saddest part about that is, and please keep this in mind, the saddest part about that is they have wasted all those years when they could have been sharing his life, all of his life, and how much she lost by not being a part of that life, and how much he lost by not being able to share the best and perhaps the saddest parts of his life with her. She knew, but she respected him enough to wait until he was ready. But she knew. They all know. We all know. So just ask you to keep that in mind, that sometimes just knowing is really all there is, and it's the best way to keep your family together sometimes. We'd better share that time than to lose that time together. What else have I learned? I've learned that there are haters are still out there, and there's no amount of talking to them. So we don't. I prefer to spend my time talking to the educatable middle. I know that I am right and they are wrong. So Jerry Falwell never invited me, Pat Robertson has never invited me, and I would never be able to change their minds, and I'm not even going to try. They make way too much off of hating the gay community to think there's something else. I kind of rambled there to answer your question, but I hope I did answer it, and since I can't see if you're nodding or shaking, I'll assume that I did. Do we have another question? Yeah. Okay, great. I can't see you, I'm sorry. So,
my name's Meg, I'm a student here. And you talked a little about the educatable middle, and I'd like to know if you found in your travels maybe a strategy or two that you've seen to be more effective than others in maybe talking people one way or another, or ones that definitely haven't worked.
Well, you know, as I said, it's still individuals. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, kind of thing. Really, the best thing to do, and even Harvey Milk talked about it in the movie about him, same language, you have to tell your stories. Until people know, as I said earlier, that their pastor, their baker, their policeman are gay, then the stereotypes win out, and the stereotypes are our enemy. The truth needs to be told, and always told, and not just by the members of the community, but by the allies as well. Family and friends, supporters, y'all need to know it, and y'all need to talk about it, because until then, the ignorance is our enemy. The stereotypes are our enemy. Y'all need to know, and your family needs to know, and your friends need to know. If you have gay people in your life, if it's part of your family or just your friends, we all need to know. It seems to make it more real to put a face on an issue. Definitely makes it more personal. And when you know someone, that's great. The hard part there is you all know gay people, but you may not know that you know gay people, because they haven't told you. You may think it, but you don't know it, and that makes a difference. It's important that you know it. Now, am I saying you all need to wear a sign that says, I'm gay? Of course I'm not. I'm just asking you to be honest about your life. When you go to work and there's that picture of your partner or your significant other on your desk and you've been telling people it's your favorite cousin, probably it's time to tell the truth. When you do family excursions, it's great to come to work and share those excursions with everybody there, because you have the right to bore them the way they bore you. It's got to be in the company bylaws or something that you can do that. But what's important is that it creates the family unit for them, something they may not have thought of. Y'all have significant others and kids and family, and you need to share that. Anything to make it less unusual and more typical is what we need to do. And there are ways to do it without being confrontational. calling someone when they tell those jokes, calling them on it, or using those words are ways to do it without being confrontational. Bullies don't like to be confronted, and they back down immediately because they have nothing to back up what they are saying. That's kind of how that works. Of course, you have to choose your moments. I don't suggest you confront them at 3 o'clock in the morning after everyone's been drinking and there's 5 of them and 1 of you. That's probably not a good plan. But there are places to do it, and it's necessary to do it. Because the use of hate language has become so endemic to our everyday language that it's hard to know. It's hard to know what it really means. I mean, we hear 7-year-old kids saying, oh, that's so gay. Well, why are they saying that? Because they've heard some other person, perhaps an older sibling or perhaps their parents, saying it in a disparaging way. They know it's meant to be an insult. I don't really understand how that ever got started, but that's the case. So what do we do to change people's minds? We're honest about who we are and who our family and friends are. You need to talk and you need to tell your stories. That's how we change hearts and minds. How do we change our legislators? You have to call them and let them know what you want them to do. Most often when I lobby, what I hear is, well, my constituents haven't contacted me, so I guess they think I'm doing the right thing. Yeah, not so much. You just don't talk to them. And you need to. You need to use the voice. Somewhere we've forgotten how powerful we can really be, and that we don't work for them, they work for us. And they need to be reminded quite often that that's the case. But we also need to let them know when we support them. They need to know that we have their backs when it comes to a challenging vote. So you need to be paying attention and be aware, be politically aware. You have to be part of the system to make it work. We've been silent, indifferent, and complacent far too long. Okay, next question. Wherever. Okay,
you
we're
have
all
to
over
look
here.
down. I'm short. One of our local heroes here, Amy Ray of the Indigo Girls, has recorded a bunch of solo CDs, and on her first CD she has a song that's called Laramie, and I wondered if you're familiar with it and if you have any comments about it.
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Amy Ray of the Indigo Girls, they're our local favorites here from Decatur, Georgia. Amy Ray has her own, she's got a solo career and has recorded a couple of compact discs on her own, not with the Indigo Girls. And on her first album, she has a song that is called Laramie, and I wondered if you're familiar with it or if you have any comments about it.
I'm sorry, there's something about the acoustics coming back to me that aren't really working, but I got the question. It's about the Indigo Girls and a song called Laramie.
Yeah.
Okay. I am very familiar with the Indigo Girls. I'm not familiar with the song. There were many songs out there that I really know nothing about. I'm surprised they didn't let me know that they had done a song. I'm sorry that they didn't. I'm honored that they wrote a song. Elton John has done a song as well. They're all very moving and personal stories of their expressions, I guess, their feelings. And I appreciate that very much, but I can't speak directly about the song. Thanks for your question. Do we have another song? Another question? Yeah, let's have a song. Let's all just break into song here.
I'm ready for a few blues songs about what's going on. I go to a church that's in my neighborhood. I drive a long way to school every day and back. Today it took me 2 hours to drive home. It takes me 20 minutes to drive to work. And I'd elect to go to the closest church just because I'm sick of being on the road.
Right.
I do, however, go to a church. It's the denomination I grew up with that I left when I became a college student, and I couldn't reconcile what I believed and what was taught by the church I grew up in. But I'm back in, been going to that denomination again, and I find that frequently there are comments made that are disparaging and judgmental about especially ethnic groups or people that are gay. And I just sit there and don't say anything because I work hard all week long and I just want to try to reconcile my feelings and get back on track on Sunday. But on Wednesdays and Sundays, a lot of times there is a lot of judgmentalism. And I don't know how to stand up to people that I feel like are not going to change.
Yeah, I totally understand your problem, and I appreciate the question and your story as well, because it's not an unusual story. Unfortunately, it's a very common story. And I myself have been in a similar position where I've gone to a wedding, and the minister was so virulent against the gay community. He took the opportunity to talk about marriage being, this is what it should be, and how dare they, blah, blah, blah. And I was really getting angry. And I was sitting there with Logan, my son, and he said, Mom, this isn't really about you. And I was like, oh, okay, I get that, but he is wrong. And Logan said, well, that's really his problem. Okay, doesn't really address the issue of being in a congregation, but it talks about how you deal with it. There is a way to do it. I know that takes great courage and great commitment for you to continue to go there. I had a program a few years ago with an older gentleman who came with his partner. He was probably 65 or so, and he asked me a similar question. He said, my partner and I go to a Catholic church that shuns us when we go. They won't sit by us, they won't acknowledge us, and they don't talk to us. But we continue to go and try to be a part of the church activities. And he said, if you were me, would you go to a church that was accepting and part of our community, or would you continue to go to the church that rejects us? And to me, that was like a no-brainer. I said, I would go where my view of Christianity is expressed, where it's love and acceptance of everyone. And then he said to me, but how will they ever learn? Okay, that's an eye-opener. How will they ever learn? Then the question becomes, do they want to? Do they want to learn? Do they want to be different? And this brings up one of my favorite rants about why do we think we need someone to tell us how to live? Why do we need someone to tell us what's right and wrong? Why do we need some one person to interpret the Bible for us? Are we not allowed to form our own thoughts about what that means? A lot of the quotations that anti-gay ministers use are taken so out of context that I don't really get where they even are coming from. I am not a scholar, but what I understand is in the New Testament, the commandment of love your fellow man is supposed to be the most important one. That's what I know. I understand your reason for going to that church, but if it's making you unhappy, I'd rethink. But then again, how will they ever learn? But if you're going there by yourself and you're suffering through this by yourself, I don't know, that's a call. How are you going to teach them? Again, I have found that to be not a rewarding situation. There are ways to do it in smaller groups, but an entire congregation, unless you have allies in the congregation, it may be more hurtful to you than you're willing to take on. It would be for me. And I have a particular reason to be there. But I know my limits. I would cry. That's what I would do. I would cry. To be able to explain my position and how I think God loves every man and doesn't make mistakes, they would shout me down. I'm not willing to do that. To me, that's victimizing Matt all over again. The two men who murdered Matt, do I blame them? A little. Mostly I blame society for creating the environment that told those two young men it was okay to do that to Matt. And it's the society of the church preaching anti-gay message. And when our national leader goes on TV and says that the gay community does not deserve to marry, he's basically telling everyone the gay community is a second-class citizen, that they don't deserve all the rights that they are trying to accomplish. Well, that basically gives permission for anybody just to do whatever. Well, that's not right. This is about job protection and security and happiness, and what about that is not available to everyone? What makes that correct? Nothing, in my mind. I don't have an answer to your question. I wish I did. It's a matter personal fortitude and what you think you can take on as an individual. I can tell by the way you asked the question that it's very emotional for you and very hurtful. I'm sorry for that. But that's what society is today. It's divided, really divided. And I don't know how to fix it. I just know that we need to change the hearts and minds, and the only way we can do that is to talk and tell our stories. Maybe there's a more welcoming avenue for your stories. I wish I had an answer. I'm sorry. I don't. And I grew up in Wyoming. My grandparents homesteaded there. My family was not a go to church every Sunday, say a prayer before dinner kind of family. We went once in a while, and I have no background for understanding the level of importance that some families and communities and areas place on their church, and I have no frame of reference for that. So I probably have a high level of intolerance for that kind of intolerance. I'm just being straight with you. That's kind of how it is with me. And I'm really sorry for your situation. I wish I had an answer for you. I wish you could just stand up and say, y'all are wrong. Or perhaps we could take on the mood of the Congress and say, you lie. I don't know. Because to me, that's what they're doing. So I don't know. I don't know how to make that right. I wish I did. And I appreciate you sharing your story. So I'm sure there are other people in this audience who've experienced something similar or know someone who has. My hat's off to you for sharing. Thank you. Do we have another question?
Yeah, hey, my name's Chris. Just kind of an observation that leads to a question. You know, you look back, you know, in United States history, and you often see discrimination of all sorts.
Right.
Let's say in particular racial discrimination, where 50, 60 years ago, I can drop the N-bomb and have the support of the majority of my peers. But since the civil rights and all that stuff, the United States showed, in my opinion, such a huge skyrocket in establishing equality and, you know, and trying to grow into that, into what they're trying to support and represent. But why do you feel that there's such this leap, you know, this talk about gay and equal rights and stuff? Why is it such a big leap for, you know, as a whole for us to accept it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you were right. Throughout history, there have been periods of time when immigrants were coming into this nation to make this nation what it is. And my ancestry is Irish, and for gosh sakes, prejudice against the Irish community was extreme, and in some places still is. We're a xenophobic society, and why are we not accepting of the gay community? Because we don't know anything about it. It's our ignorance that's doing us in. Because people are secretive, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to lose their jobs, they don't want to lose potential family and friends. It's been a stigma for so long that it's just hard to get past it. And now in the last 15, 20 years, we've actually begun to talk about it in public forums. The younger generation has never lived in a world without Will and Grace, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, gay storylines on TV and movies, novels. It's a dramatic leap now. It's so generational. When kids, the high school kids and younger college kids start voting and running for office, pretty much these issues are going to be over, I think. They'll be in the majority. Will it be 100%? Not as long as we continue to teach hate in this nation. Racism is still a huge issue. 40 years ago, we thought maybe it would get better. I don't really see that it's that much better, except that legally they are protected, whereas the gay community is not. And I don't understand, well, it's really the last group where those jokes, those words, those laws are acceptable. If you were to ask the average person on the street if they thought you could be fired from your job for being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, they would probably say, no, that's not right. We have the Equal Employment Opportunity Act now. You can't just fire someone for that. But in 29 states, you can. Yeah, and Wyoming. You can. That's just not right. And of all the places where we need to have support for our kids, because there are gay kids in our schools, yes, there are, even if they tell you they're not, they are. is to have that access to the gay community in school. They need someone to talk to. They need a mentor. They need someone to tell them it's okay, because it is okay. You are who you are. That's just the way it is. And in a state like Georgia or Wyoming where you can't do that, those kids have no protection, no one to go to. It's not safe for the mentor or the child. We have so many myths, so many wrong thoughts about the gay community that we need to clear up. And the only way we can do that really is to tell our stories, all of us. Thank you for your question. If we have anybody remaining, we'll just do one more and then we'll go to the book signing. Okay, I don't see anybody. So that's great.
Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
My name is Trisha. I'm a senior here at Agnes Scott College. And in my experience, it's really easy to talk to strangers about homophobia, but it's really hard to talk to loved ones and close friends about it.
Yeah.
So, like, what's a strategy or a way to talk to, I don't know what the question is. I just don't know what to do when I'm trying to explain it to a loved one or to a close friend, but I'm very well when I'm talking to strangers about the issues.
I agree. I'm kind of in that same boat. My family was very accepting of Matt and of the issues as well, so I never really had to do it with them, but I had some friends who absolutely were against what I am doing because they are of the mind that the gay community is at large is not is right where they should be, which is under the thumb of everyone else. They accepted Matt, but that's because they knew Matt, but nothing else, which is kind of where we are, where we have to tell our stories. That makes it different. The only thing I found that worked in my particular case was to live my life in the words that I speak. I have to include in my circle my gay friends, my members of the gay community who mean so much to me have to be part of my circle of friends and family. That's the only way I can communicate to them how important it is to me. Even though intellectually they should know how important it is to me, for me to actually talk to them about it is different than actually living it. And that's what worked for me. Because when I would try to talk about it, I would get all wrapped up in tears. Because it just seemed so logical to me that I didn't understand why they weren't getting it. I am not a good one-on-one debater. I cry. I get frustrated and cry. And 10 minutes later, it's like, oh, I wish I'd said that. I wish I'd said that. But that's really not how this brain works. Now, on the other hand, my husband is like the exact opposite. He says things before he thinks, and sometimes it's not always the right thing. Maybe we balance each other out there. I'm not really sure. But that's what worked for me and my loved ones, is I actually had to live that life. Talking about it in words didn't work for me. Maybe that would be easier for you. Maybe introducing the gay community would be a challenge at first, but sometimes time is the answer. Things change. Personal experiences change how people think. Again, I see one more question, then we'll call it good. Okay, we have one over here, and then I'll take you. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a senior at Decatur High, and I really did. I just moved here a few weeks ago, and in the town I used to live in, I really did think, well, 20 years from now, 30, 40 years from now, when my generation is in charge, when we're voting, when we're in the Senate and the House, we'll sort this stuff out. We're not so homophobic, and it'll be okay. But I got here to this so-called enlightened college town, and I found more homophobia in the high school here than I ever saw in Durham, North Carolina. And I say things, but people just talk right over me. I try to... Logic doesn't seem to work, and I don't know what to do. How would you suggest I deal with situations like this?
Does your high school have a gay-straight alliance?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of trying to figure that out.
If you find that it has one, I would definitely be asking them those questions. I'm thinking maybe they don't if you're finding a lot of homophobia in your school. What about a PFLAG chapter in your area? Do you know anything about that?
I really don't know.
Okay. I would look into that. I know you've just said you just moved here. I would look into that because they would be helpful in talking to your school about trying to fix things, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be too big of a task for you alone. I would try to engage an instructor or friends, close personal friends who are fellow students. This is a hard thing to accomplish on your own. And I know you're new, so maybe friends aren't really part of the picture yet, close friends you trust. Don't stop talking to your parents, at least. Let them know what you are doing so they will know what's going on if someone approaches them, because sometimes no matter where you are, even in West Hollywood where you would think, or Castro District in San Francisco where it would be so zero homophobic, you will find that it is there as well. Because you moved to a college town doesn't make it okay for everywhere you are. But I'm pretty sure that you would be surprised that at a different school, it would be a totally different story. I wouldn't judge everything by your one school, and I definitely am feeling for your situation. And I don't have the perfect answer for your question, but I know that there are resources out there that will help you address the issue. Listen right now, more than talk maybe, would be a good thing to do so you'll know where to go. Talk to your parents for sure. If you have a teacher, a counselor, even fellow students that you trust, that would be a good place to start, and then you can build a momentum, and that would be a great thing to educate the school. Try to get a production of the Laramie Project in your school. The Gay Straight Alliance is a huge deal. GLSEN is huge, PFLAG, to bring in and talk to your school. All these things work. It's just a matter of finding the right people and time to bring them in. And that's what I would suggest. In the meantime, for yourself, hold true to what you believe. And that's the most important thing you can do for you, is to hold true what you believe. I'm sad for your situation, but it could get better, and you could be the reason that it does. You could be what they are waiting for. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, one more question over here.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name's Arlo. There's a group of us actually from the local seminary, which is about a mile away, and it's a pretty inclusive campus, and we have a group of us actually going to participate in the march in DC. My question is we talk a lot about things not to say and really obvious things not to say. What have you found to be the most supportive and encouraging things that you've heard during this process, both for the LGBTQ community and in the grieving process? Because we talk so much about what not to say. What are some things that we should be saying?
Well, the hate language is really a big deal. And what I have found to be the most successful, and I hope I'm answering your question because some of that didn't all get to me. When I hear it, and I have a hard time correcting people because I don't like to debate. But what really works for me is just to say, I don't really appreciate your use of those words. There's a way to do it so non-confrontational. And then if they say, well, I don't really care what you think, my response is, well, I'm sorry that you don't, but those words are hurtful. And that pretty much is the end of the conversation for me. I don't feel like I need to go into great detail about why I think that. And also, I think you will find that people who use those words in a hurtful way are not doing it alone. They're in a group. If they're using those words out of ignorance or because they don't know that it means something bad, they absolutely will fall all over themselves to correct it. They just are unaware, and they just need to be educated, reminded. But if it's in a group, it's going to be an entirely different situation. And I am not prepared one-on-one to debate that, just because I know I'm right and they're wrong. I don't debate well. That's why I don't do the talking head news shows. I don't debate well. I cry. I know that about myself. So I don't engage that way. Now, if you're a good debater, my hat's off to you. I am not. And I just find that a simple reminder that those things don't sit well with me, that I've done all I can do. I recognize my limitations. And what should we say? We should never tell the jokes. We should never use the words. And we should not stand for it when other people do. Speaking out for your personal comfort is always welcome in my understanding, and if it's not, then that's really their problem and not yours. You can't change their minds sometimes, and sometimes you just need to accept that. They will figure it out eventually, and if they don't, it's their loss. It becomes their problem and not yours, in my view. Now, I'm sure you'll talk to other people who will encourage you to debate them to the ground. Well, I'm not going to do that because I know I can't do that. It's not in my comfort level to do that. I just live my life the way I think I need to encourage acceptance of everyone, and that's the best I can do. I appreciate your question. I also appreciate the dilemma of trying to communicate to people that it's unacceptable to use those words and to talk that way, but sometimes you just can't change people's minds. I wish we could. I wish that we could enlighten everyone in one broad stroke and make the world safe and pleasant, I guess, for everyone, but it's really hard, gritty work. But it starts with people like you who are willing to fight for the change. That's what changes people's hearts and minds. And telling our stories. Telling our stories. It's like the most important thing we can do. The gay community cannot make these changes without us, without their allies. We can't be afraid. If we're afraid, just think how they feel. We just have to stand up for what's right, but we have to know our own comfort level. Sometimes we're challenged, and sometimes we're up to it, and sometimes we're not ready. That's nothing to be ashamed of. I want to thank you all for coming tonight to this question and answer. I hope it was what you were expecting. I hope you'll read my book because I think it will explain a lot about who I am and how I got here and who Matt was and his life, and then you'll understand more about the gay community and what we're trying to accomplish and how you can help. Again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Please join us over at the Alston Campus Center for the reception and book signing. Judy will be happy to sign any of the books you have this evening, and you can enjoy us for some refreshments over there also. Outright Books has books here this evening, and we'll have them over there at Alston Campus Center for your convenience.